Alright guys, so I just dropped a video about the conspiracy charges, the money laundering charges, all that are being brought against certain advisors to President Trump. This goes back all the way, you know what I'm saying, back to the 2016 campaign. They indicted Paul Manafort, they indicted the Greek guy, George Papadopoulos. Now, that guy, George Papadopoulos, coincidentally, he's actually from Chicago. He actually went to DePaul University, just as an interesting side note. But there are several other people, they're cooperating with the feds, and they've got some serious dirt, potentially. Okay, now I'm going to name some of these people. The media has not really been talking about these people. Papadopoulos is not the only informant giving information to investigators. One of the other guys is a guy named Rinat Akhmetshin. He's a Russian-American lobbyist who was present at a meeting between a Russian lawyer, Donald Trump Jr., Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort. He also now has appeared before a grand jury. Then there's a guy named Felix Sater. Now this is the biggest guy. He's a key to Trump's alleged Russian money train. He's a criminal with connections to Russian and American organized crime, the Russian mafia, and to American organized crime, a man who has already been a federal informant in the past, and he's now once again helping authorities. Now this guy Sater, he's believed to be providing information about a money laundering operation based in the former Soviet Republic of Kazakhstan, which involved Trump properties. Okay, so this would be big, because if it involved Trump's properties, Trump would have to prove that he didn't know what was going on with his own properties over there. Now, here's the thing. Money laundering, for those of you guys who are kind of younger and don't really know what money laundering is, this is when you have dirty money, all right, money that's been obtained through illegal means, and you do some kind of legal transaction with that dirty money, and then after the legal transaction is done, there's a paper trail towards that legal transaction, and it makes the money clean, because when people ask where did you get this money, you can point to the legal transaction. Okay, so it's basically turning illegal money into legal money by moving it around to various investments or businesses. Okay, that's the shortest explanation I can give of money laundering. And this is what a lot of Trump's people are being investigated for. Russian organized crime is big into money laundering. The Russian mafia, this is one of their specialties. I mean, all organized crime does money laundering, but they're really big with it, okay? And a high-ranking member of the Russian mafia, a guy who goes by the street name Little Taiwanese because he has more Asian-like features, this guy was actually running a money laundering operation out of one of Trump's hotels in New York. He's now on the FBI's most wanted list, and he's on the run. Now, here's the thing. There's no evidence that Trump actually knew that he was doing that out of his... I mean, you know, Russian mafia guys who do crime in the United States got to rent somewhere, you know, and the guy who they're renting from, you know, there's no evidence that there's any connection with him, but all of the other Russian contacts that Trump had in the past, even before the campaign, are now being looked at. So it's hardly a secret that Mueller's FBI team would like to turn Manafort, who faces a lengthy prison sentence and a massive fine if he is convicted of the various charges of money laundering, secret lobbying for a foreign power, lying to government investigators, and sundry other matters. Trump's allies are already exposing their trepidation about this. Roger Stone, who helped launch the president's election campaign and remains a close confidant, and is also a former business partner of Manafort, complained last night, "Now I understand how this works," he said. "You try to find something Paul Manafort did 15 years ago and you call it money laundering, tax evasion, wire fraud, some nonsense. Then you say, okay, Manafort, we're sending you to jail for 15 years unless you just admit that you were colluding with the Russians and Donald Trump knew everything." So basically, you know, Trump's people are saying that that's their game plan, to get these guys to flip. Some people were already on this in the comments, you know what I'm saying, trying to get these guys to flip so they can give up Trump. Trump is the big fish, okay? He's the big catch. Now, the other guy that, you know, they got to worry about is Ivana Trump, Donald's ex-wife. Now, among the things that Papadopoulos and Manafort knew was that the Kremlin claimed to have dirt on Hillary Clinton. Papadopoulos has been told this by an academic in London and a Russian woman who he thought was Vladimir Putin's niece. Papadopoulos then sent emails to the Trump election team about this while urging meetings with the Russians. Now, did Trump know about those emails? It's not likely, because this guy Papadopoulos was kind of a lower-level guy, but I'm sure the FBI is trying to find that out. Now, Manafort, Trump Jr., and Kushner met with the Russian lawyer named Natalia Veselnitskaya in June of 2016 at the Trump Hotel in New York because it is claimed she was offering to impart information Moscow supposedly had on Clinton. So it's going to be tough, I would say, for Trump to prove that he did not know anything about this if Manafort, Trump Jr., and Kushner, his son-in-law, were all there. So his son-in-law, and his top campaign advisor were there. He's going to have to do some tough work to prove that he didn't know about that. So President Trump is then said to have personally dictated a statement in his son's name, saying that the meeting primarily discussed a program about the adoption of Russian children. Adoption of Russian children by Americans was banned by Moscow in response to the Magnitsky Act of 2012. That statement by the president has become a key factor into whether he and those around him attempted to obstruct the investigation into Russian meddling in the U.S. election. So if he made this up, if they met to see if the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton, and Trump wrote a statement in his son's name saying that the meeting was really about adopting Russian kids, that's obstructing justice because you're misleading investigators. You're lying, basically, to investigators, and that's a crime. Now this guy whose name was Renat Akhmetshin, he gave evidence under oath before a grand jury convened by the FBI for several hours on the 11th of June this year, among other things, about the Trump Tower meeting where he was taken by this lady Veselnitskaya. Now, this guy Akhmetshin, he's a lobbyist. He is acknowledged serving as a counterintelligence officer in the Soviet military in the past, and he is now, he has said in a newspaper interview, a mercenary but not a Russian spy and does not work for the Kremlin. He said, I spend other people's money to achieve other people's goals. That's the way he explained his work. The Senate Judiciary Committee is investigating Akhmetshin's U.S. citizenship, his military background, and whether he improperly lobbied for Russian interests. Okay, now back to this guy, Felix Sater. He's likely to be center stage if Trump's downfall comes from his Russian monetary connections. His birth name is Felix Sheferovsky. He was born in Russia, and he's one of the most colorful characters in the Trump Chronicles. Someone once jailed for stabbing a man in the face with a cocktail glass, and who later avoided a possible 20-year prison sentence and $5 million fine by becoming a federal informer in another case, that of fraud and extortion by the mafia targeting the elderly and some of the Holocaust survivors. So this guy, he was going to get a 20-year prison sentence, but he turned government witness in Russia and snitched out some Russian mafia guys for a scheme that they had to extort money from elderly people and Holocaust survivors. Like I said on Instagram, these Russian mafia guys are dirty. I mean, they deal in human trafficking, enslavement of, like, workers and stuff. I mean, this is not pretty stuff. In a recently unsealed transcript of a hearing in New York, the Justice Department described the value of Sater's snitching. He had supplied information, it said, on Russian organized crime, American mafia families, and Al-Qaeda. Sater does not deny working for the government, but he says that he did not inform on the mafia. Sater became managing director of the Bayrock Group, which is a real estate firm which has offices 2 floors beneath the Trump Organization's headquarters in Trump Tower for 8 years. So, again, something that Trump's going to have to prove he didn't know anything about. Now, this Bayrock went into partnership with Trump in connection with the construction of the Trump Soho Hotel. The two men appeared at ribbon-cutting ceremonies for joint projects and went on business trips, including one to Moscow, together. Sater used Trump Organization business cards, though the Trump Organization maintains that he was not an employee. Sater boasted that he was so close to the Trump family that he was asked by Donald to squire Donald Jr. and Ivanka on a trip to Moscow, and that during it he arranged for Ivanka to sit in Putin's chair in the president's office in the Kremlin. Ivanka acknowledges the trip took place and it may have involved sitting in Putin's desk. Sater is a lifelong friend of Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer and a former vice president of the Trump Organization. Sater was convinced that Putin would help Trump to get to the White House, and he and Cohen would receive the credit due for this. He said, "Can you believe 2 guys from Brooklyn are going to elect the president?" That was the email that was sent to Cohen at one stage. He had stated in earlier messages that Putin would back the development of a Trump Tower hotel in Moscow, and that this would be part of a grand plan. Our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get Putin on this program and we will get Trump elected. That's what they said. Cohen was named in the Trump report by former MI6 officer Christopher Steele as a key conduit between the Russians through Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who was allegedly tasked with carrying out a covert campaign to undermine Hillary Clinton's presidential bid. Cohen had initially denied having any dealings whatsoever with the Russians in his work for Trump, but newly leaked emails show that he had asked for Peskov's help with a Trump real estate project in Moscow in 2016 when Trump was already campaigning to secure the Republican nomination for the presidency, thus raising issues of conflicts of interest. So this guy Sater, He's agreed to help a federal inquiry into alleged money laundering a guy named Viktor Krapunov, who is Kazakhstan's former energy minister and the former mayor of the city of Almaty, who was charged by Kazakh authorities with abuse of power. He is on the Interpol wanted list. That's the International Policing Organization. He's on the Interpol wanted list at the behest of the Kazakh authorities. Krapunov's family allegedly used shell companies to buy Trump's Soho properties worth an estimated $3.1 million. It's not known how much of the supposedly laundered money went to Trump. Any relevant information from the Kazakh inquiry about Donald Trump is expected to be sent to Robert Mueller. We have to wait to see whether Felix Sater, whose previous cooperation runs a gamut that's seldom seen according to the Justice Department, has more to reveal about the U.S. president, the man he had helped, as he had once excitedly claimed, to get to the White House. So, very interesting. Trump is going to have a lot of bullets to dodge in this. A lot of bullets to dodge, because there's a lot of dealings that he's had with guys with connections to Russia in the past, even with connections to the Russian mafia, and he's going to have to prove that he didn't know anything about the illegal stuff that any of them were doing, and that he didn't use any of this stuff to get to the White House. So, something we will watch with bated breath. Now, let's not, in the United States, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. That's the law, you know what I'm saying? And when we look at other criminals, you know what I'm saying, even criminals in the streets, gang members or whatever, to jump to the conclusion that they're guilty before they even, have a trial is not cool. That's something that is not, that doesn't fly in court. You got to actually prove it. So if Trump gets exonerated, he gets exonerated. And if he may not even be charged. But so far, a lot of these other guys have been charged. And, we wait to see what they're going to do because, like Trump's advisors said, they're guessing that the FBI's game plan is to go for the top dog, which is Trump. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. This is your boy Rafael Provatakis. I'm out.